Yeah, boy.
Hi, Zizaran here with another video for D4, and today I want to talk to you about scaling. So, scaling is probably my least favorite thing about Diablo 4, and this might arise some confusion from people watching, especially if you haven't reached level 92 yet, and a lot of people might be thinking, wow, I love scaling because it lets me play with my friends. And while personally I'm actually against all forms of scaling, I do see like a huge amount of benefits of scaling, so that like a level 60 or level 7 character can play together with a level 10 or a level 15. There are obviously tangible benefits here that are really good. However, what I'm talking about is the fact that all the content in the game scales up to level 95, and that is really bad. Now, there's obviously a lot to talk about here, but effectively this makes it that leveling up is a punishment in Diablo 4, and I don't think necessarily that's a good thing. So what do I mean by that? Well, the number one source of power is obviously getting some skill points and paragon powers, but the major upgrade is gear. And if you're not getting anything like substantial, like if you're not getting a big upgrade, you're actually getting a large nerf. The biggest point where we noticed this was level 92. Going from like 90 to 92, we noticed a very large nerf where we went from being super strong, even though we hadn't really upgraded that much since like level 70 to 80. At least our paragon powers had been really getting in, but we hadn't, obviously it's still early days for Diablo 4 and we haven't had a lot of time to min-max our builds yet. So past level 85 to 90, there wasn't that much important for us to put our paragon powers in, and that means that instead of getting things like 10% more damage, 10% more damage resistance, we were getting things like 5 int. We didn't really have much to do with our last 10 points. And because of that, we started to notice a huge scaling increase on the monsters, and our gear was pretty much as good as it could get for those levels. Now, obviously, there are a lot of downsides here to us staying in the same dungeon, and if we were doing nightmare sigils, this would actually be different, because we would then also be leveling up the glyphs, which would in turn give us more power, and it would be less of a problem. I'm still going to cover why this is a problem no matter of this, but let's talk about why that is a problem anyway. So this means that at some point you're not getting that same feeling in an ARPG. Like if I'm playing Path of Exile and I hit like certain thresholds, like 80, 85, etc., I'm not getting punished, right? Like each level is a buff, right? It's always a positive. It should, in my opinion, leveling up should never be a bad thing. That's not where the difficulty should come in. It should in fact come in through nightmare sigils, and you should be encouraged to make your character stronger because you get more rewarded by doing harder content. Diablo 4 doesn't really do that, and that's like a big problem for me. So first, let's talk a little bit about what we were doing with the dungeons. So because everything scales up with you specifically to 95, you can just do normal dungeons, right? Because they're pretty okay. All the way to 100, right? If you just want to hit 100, that's a good way to do it. And now obviously there's been some drama around resetting dungeons, which is a very normal ARPG feature, right? Sacred, Torchlight, Path of Exile, Diablo 2, Diablo 3, everything has resetting dungeons, and Diablo 4 is no different. You could either leave your party and relog, or you could do the party thing, which is leave the dungeon and re-invite and remake the party. Now, a lot of people feel like that is a big issue. However, obviously, if that wasn't the case, I will show you what you could do instead. Now, let's say that there was a dungeon reset cooldown and you had no way of bypassing that cooldown. That's what a lot of people would actually want for some reason. But if that was the case, well, this was the dungeon you were farming. Now you just have to run that. That is around a 10-second run, which some people are thinking, well, you know, now you have some downtime between dungeons. You actually don't, because one person would just leave the dungeon early, run there, and the other players would instantly teleport. So you're still getting effectively the same gameplay loop, making here that the dungeon resetting isn't the problem, it's the scaling. In my opinion, dungeons, actually all content in the game should not scale past level 80. Now, I actually think there's an argument for having Hell Tides scaling past level 80 and them being able to go up to 95, specifically in World Tier 4. In World Tier 3, they should scale lower. Some of you might not be thinking, well, they actually do. That is how they work, Zizaran, except the elites always scale to the highest level. That means that if you're in World Tier 1 and you meet an elite monster, Even like the ones like that drop like the pale tongues, the crushed bones, and the demon hearts over here somewhere, they scale to 105 even in world tier 1. So they probably shouldn't do that. And world tier 3 should just go up to like 75 or 80 to everything, even hell tides. This is important because then you actually have a way to respec characters. You don't at the moment. We can get into that a little bit later. But yeah, so if that was the case and you couldn't farm normal dungeons like this, and now these dungeons are obviously considerably easier than the Nightmare Sigils, and in my opinion shouldn't be the way to level to 100. I'll show you what a Nightmare Sigil is. It is basically the Path of Exile equivalent of maps, also similar to rifts in Diablo 3, etc. And you basically right click this, and if you're in a group, it'll come up. Other people have to accept it, and you see that there's downsides like death pulls, monster cold damage, monster vulnerable resist. And these do not scale at all. These are things you have to drop or craft, and you can like disenchant, like salvage the ones you don't want to do, but these do not scale at all. So regardless if I'm level 100 or if I'm level 30, this tier 13 I think is 82 or 85 or something, and they actually go all the way up to level 100. So I could technically craft a level 91 to 100 now, which is 150. This would absolutely destroy my character right now, but you know, I can't remember exactly what tier is around level 100, but that's what I could be farming right now. And regardless of scaling, this is perfect. This is how it should be. And I think most people, from what I'm hearing, agree this should be the way to hit level 100. Now, a big issue right now is that my character is sort of soft bricked. And some people will say, well, this is because you farm the same dungeon over and over again, but this is actually going to happen to everybody that wants to do a respec. One thing that's going to be hard about this for respecing is that you're not able to like change your build and go in slightly lower content and then try to do the respec, right? You have to find the perfect gear, make sure everything is set up for you to do the full respec and change over completely at once. Because if you're slightly weaker, you're no longer able to fight the monsters. So that means the respecking in that sense is completely out of the window. You could get carried by friends. It's especially important you can get carried by low level friends, because a level 30 to 70 character ends up being a lot stronger than level 92 plus characters. So we saw that a lot of people were doing things like this, where they would have maybe a level 70, 80 character being the carry, because you're still getting huge power updates at that point, or you might be the peak of your build compared to the monsters at that point. And while they're killing level 80 monsters, you might think, well, surely the dungeon is the same level as the host. And we saw this during the race where people are saying you should have Karn make the group, he's one level higher. Well, that doesn't actually matter, because while Karn was level 98 and he was fighting level 95 monsters, if I was level 90, I would be fighting level 90 monsters. So that is the big difference there, where everybody's seeing a monster equivalent to their level. This is why you'll kind of have a reverse carry situation at some points. So that's pretty much how I feel about scaling. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I do think and see the benefits of scaling, especially at a low level. Somebody like being level 70 or 80, being able to play with their lower level friends, and obviously things like boosting, etc., is really, really loved by a lot of people. I just don't think scaling should happen past level 80, and Nightmare Sigil should be the way to level your characters through the endgame. That being said, let me know what you guys think. Would love to hear your thoughts and how you've been enjoying scaling, especially at the low level so far. Thanks for watching. Sub if you liked the video, but more importantly, try to die less than I do.